Husband announced he was leaving me at our daughter's graduation, but started screaming when Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. He stood up during the standing ovation, turned to me and calmly whispered, "I'm leaving you tomorrow." I didn't even flinch, because I already knew. The gym was filled with proud parents, clapping for their kids as they crossed the stage. Our daughter had just received her diploma. She looked so beautiful in her cap and gown. I smiled as she waved at us from the front row. It was supposed to be her big day, and I was determined to let it stay that way. When he leaned over and said those words, I stayed quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just looked ahead and clapped like nothing had happened. That confused him. I could feel his eyes on me, waiting for some reaction. But I gave him nothing. The truth is, I'd found out months ago. He thought he was being careful, sneaking out late, whispering on the phone, setting new passwords. But secrets have a way of slipping out. A text left open, a receipt in a pocket, a phone call answered by mistake. I had seen enough. I knew her name, her face, and even the hotel they liked. I also knew he planned to leave me once graduation was over. So I planned something too. For weeks, I gathered everything. Screenshots, photos, videos. I created a file. Not to beg or argue, but to show the truth. To let everyone see the man behind the smile. After the ceremony, we all gathered outside to take pictures. Family, friends, teachers, all laughing and talking. He stood beside me, still thinking he had the upper hand. He leaned in again and smirked. I smiled back and pulled out my phone. "Everyone," I said loudly, raising my voice just enough to quiet the group. "Before we take pictures, I want to show you all a short video I made for today." People turned toward me, curious. Some smiled, expecting a sweet tribute. I tapped play and held my phone high. The screen lit up with a series of photos. Him with her. Caught in places he said he never went. Messages that were far too intimate to misunderstand. His voice on the phone, promising her things he never gave me. Gasps filled the air. His face turned pale. He lunged toward me, but it was too late. "You knew," he hissed. "I knew," I said softly. "Happy graduation." He screamed, but I didn't hear it. I was too busy hugging our daughter, who whispered, "I'm proud of you." I found out about his affair 3 weeks before graduation. He was acting strange, too polite, too distant. I didn't confront him. I just watched, waited, and planned. There was no point in yelling or crying. I wanted something better. Something he would never forget. Graduation day came fast. Our daughter was finally crossing the stage. Family flew in, friends arrived early, and everyone was excited. He was smiling, playing the perfect husband, holding my hand and greeting guests. He had no idea what was coming. I sent an invitation to the woman he was sleeping with, through a friend, of course. I made sure she'd be there. She thought she was coming as a secret guest to celebrate their future. What she didn't know was that I also invited someone else, her husband. The ceremony was beautiful. Our daughter looked proud, and I was proud of her. I held it together, waiting for my moment. When it was time for me to speak, I stepped up to the microphone. I was asked to say a few words to honor our daughter. I started slow, thanking the school, the teachers, and our families. I spoke about hard work and love. Then I turned to him and smiled. "And to my husband," I said, "thank you for showing our daughter what dishonesty looks like, for sneaking around with a woman who's also married. She's actually here today, so is her husband. Funny how things work out." Gasps. Silence. All heads turned. His smile vanished. He looked around, panicked, eyes darting through the crowd. Then she stood up, a few rows back, her face frozen in shock. And then he appeared. The other man, her husband. My husband tried to back away, but the other man stepped forward, calm but furious. "You think you can take my wife and just walk away from your own," he said. Security moved in fast, but it was too late. Yelling started. Someone knocked over a chair. People pulled out phones. I stood still, watching him try to explain. He begged, blamed, even tried to point at me. No one listened. The school staff ended the event quickly. Guests left in groups, whispering. He chased after me, yelling things I couldn't even hear. I didn't stop. I walked straight to our daughter, hugged her tight, and said, "Let's go home." She looked up at me, calm and certain. Best graduation speech ever. "Mom." The ceremony was being streamed live. Friends and family who couldn't attend were watching from their phones and TV. Everything looked perfect on screen. Our daughter was about to walk, and I was standing beside the man I had shared half my life with. He leaned in close and whispered, "This ends today." "I'm done." I didn't blink, just nodded. He expected me to cry or beg, but I stayed calm. I had something planned. He was asked to speak as one of the parents. He'd practiced his speech for days, talking about sacrifice and family values. I let him go first. He walked up, adjusted his tie, smiled at the audience, and began. As soon as he opened his mouth, I pulled out my phone. I opened the live stream and tapped switch camera. The feed flipped from the stage to the files on my screen. Screenshots of late-night messages. Her name. Her pictures. His promises to her. Then came the recordings, his voice saying everything I never heard him say to me. The screen behind him suddenly changed too. I had connected it to the live stream earlier through the school's projector. It started showing the same evidence, loud and clear. He kept talking for a moment, confused by the crowd's reaction. Then he turned and saw it. He froze. Dropped his notes. Turn that off. People were whispering, some shouting. Phones were out, capturing every second. He tried to grab the mic again. This is fake. She's lying. But no one believed him. Not after hearing his voice and seeing his words. Our daughter stood frozen in the front row. I walked over to her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. She was shaking, but she didn't move away. He kept yelling, face red, sweat pouring. Staff tried to calm him, but he pushed one aside. That was the final straw. Security moved in and pulled him away, still screaming. His voice echoed down the hallway as they dragged him out. I stayed where I was, holding our daughter. The audience didn't know whether to clap, cry, or leave. Some stared in silence. Others nodded at me in quiet support. I ended the live stream. The screen went black. Our daughter looked up at me and whispered, "You didn't have to protect me. I already knew." "I wasn't protecting you," I said. "I was showing him I'm not afraid anymore." She nodded. We walked out together. I knew for a long time. I just didn't let him know that I knew. His late nights, sudden trips, fake kindness. It all made sense after I found the hotel receipt. That's when I hired someone, a private investigator. He did the rest. What came back was worse than I thought. A second life. A woman in another city. Fake meetings. Money hidden in a secret account. I said nothing. Just waited. Graduation day came. I smiled like everything was normal. He played the proud father, clapped loud, hugged our daughter, shook hands. I smiled back every time he looked my way. He thought I was blind. I wasn't. After the ceremony, we invited everyone to dinner. Friends, family, even a few teachers. We booked a private room at a nice place downtown. Everything was set up. Candles, flowers, a projector for a family slideshow. He toasted to our daughter. Told everyone how strong family values had shaped her. He was full of words, full of himself. I waited until he sat back down. Then I stood up and clicked the remote. The screen lit up behind me. At first, it was sweet. Pictures of our daughter growing up, birthdays, school plays, family trips. People smiled and laughed. Then the pictures changed. There he was with the other woman, holding hands, kissing her outside the hotel, walking with her in a park I'd never seen. The room went silent. His face dropped. My voice stayed calm. "While you were making memories with her," I said, "I was collecting truth." He stood up quickly, knocking over his glass. "This is insane. She's just a friend." But the photos kept playing. Dates. Locations. Text messages. A copy of the apartment lease with his name on it. He grabbed the table and flipped it. Plates crashed. Glass broke. He shouted at me, then at the guests. That's when someone else stood up. A man in a dark suit, holding an envelope. Our family friend. And my lawyer. He walked over, handed the envelope to my husband, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You've been served." He tried to throw it back, but everyone had seen. He stormed out, yelling things that no one paid attention to. I turned to our daughter, who hadn't moved. Her eyes were full, but she didn't cry. She reached for my hand and whispered, "I'm glad you waited." I squeezed her hand and said, "So am I." The house was full of people, family, friends, neighbors. Everyone had come to celebrate our daughter's big day. Music played softly, food was served, and laughter filled the room. He acted like nothing was wrong, like everything was perfect. I waited until dinner was done. Glasses were raised. It was time for the toast. I stood with a smile, holding my glass, and everyone turned to me. I began by thanking everyone for coming. I spoke about our daughter's strength, her hard work, and how proud we all were. People nodded, smiling, clapping. Then I took a breath and looked at him. "I also want to thank my husband," I said, "for teaching me how strong I really am." His smile stayed for a second, then faded. "I want to thank him for showing me what betrayal looks like, how it feels when your partner lies, cheats, hides money, and lives a second life with another woman in another city." Gasps filled the room. Chairs shifted. Faces changed. He stood up fast. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out a remote and turned toward the screen behind me. I had set it up earlier. Images appeared. Screenshots of bank transfers, photos of him with her, proof of his second home. Then came the documents. Credit card bills, gambling debts, signed leases. It was all there. He shouted, "This is fake. She's crazy." But no one believed him. The truth was too clear. Everyone had seen it with their own eyes. He turned red, breathing hard. "You're ruining everything." I didn't say a word. I just stood still and looked at him. He tried to keep yelling, but his voice cracked. He grabbed the edge of the table, shaking, and finally collapsed into the chair behind him, head in his hand. No one moved to help him. He stood up again after a few moments, face pale, and walked to the door. No one stopped him. No one spoke. He left alone, slamming the door behind him. I turned and faced the room. Some were in shock. A few had tears in their eyes. My daughter came to me and hugged me tight. One of my cousins said softly, "You didn't just save yourself. You saved all of us from believing in his lies." I looked around the room. People started to gather near me. Some hugged me. Others stood by quietly, just showing support. The party didn't end. It just changed. And so did everything else. He never understood the bond one had with our daughter. Every time I praised her, he would interrupt. Every time she came to me for advice, he called it nonsense. He said I was too soft, too emotional. But I knew better. I knew her heart, her fears, her dreams. And she knew mine. We sat together at the graduation. She held my hand tightly before walking up to receive her diploma. I watched her with pride, knowing how much she had overcome. Then he leaned close and said, "This is the last time we'll do this as a family. I'm leaving." I didn't flinch. I just nodded. Later, we hosted a small celebration. A few close friends, some family. Everyone was talking, laughing, enjoying the moment. He stood beside me, pretending nothing had happened. I tapped my glass to make a toast. The room quieted. "I want to thank everyone for being here," I began. "This is a proud moment for our daughter, and I couldn't be happier." I looked at her, and she smiled back. "Today is also special for another reason," I continued. "Because today I was set free." There were confused looks. A few whispers. "I want to thank my husband," I said, turning toward him. "Because today, he finally gave me the push I needed to move forward. To stop waiting for support that never came." He frowned, trying to speak, but I kept going. For years, I saved quietly. I worked late. I planned carefully. And today, I'm excited to announce something new. I picked up a folder from the table beside me and held it up. "This," I said, "is the official launch of my business. Fully funded, fully mine. A dream I've carried for years. And now it's real." The room filled with murmurs. Some clapped. Others looked shocked. He tried to say something, but no one listened. He walked away, defeated. I turned back to my daughter. She stood, came to me, and hugged me tightly. She whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom." Tears touched the corners of my eyes, but I didn't cry. I just whispered back, "I did it for both of us." We stood there, quiet in the middle of the room, while people around us began to understand what had just happened. I wasn't broken. I was free. And she knew it too. He thought he had everything under control. For months, he walked around like a king, not knowing I had already started gathering proof. I didn't yell or fight. I met with my lawyer, made copies of everything, and waited for the right moment. That moment came on graduation day. Our daughter looked beautiful in her gown. The ceremony was perfect, but he couldn't leave it alone. As people gathered afterward, he pulled me aside and said loud enough for others to hear, "You can stop pretending. I'm done with this marriage." Some people nearby turned their heads. He wanted me to be embarrassed. I just smiled and stepped forward. "Since we're making things public," I said, "let's finish it." He looked confused. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. "Inside are copies of your messages, travel bookings, and gifts for someone who isn't me." His face dropped. The room grew quiet. "I've already filed for divorce," and according to the prenup you signed 10 years ago, I get full custody and financial control. "You cheated." "I didn't." He started to raise his voice, but I held up one finger. "Oh," I said, "and about the house you keep calling yours." I pulled out one last document. "This deed is in my name. Always has been. You just never noticed." That's when it happened. His voice cracked, then rose into a scream. "You can't do this." But I already had. People stared, shocked. My lawyer, who was sitting quietly in the corner, stood up and nodded. "She can." "And she did," he said calmly. My husband looked around, hoping for someone to take his side. No one moved. He stormed out, slamming the door. I turned back to the crowd and apologized for the scene. But one of our neighbors walked up and said, "You don't need to apologize. That was strength." Our daughter hugged me, her voice steady. "He tried to tear you down in front of everyone," she said, "but you stood taller." I smiled and held her hand. "Because I planned for this." He thought I wouldn't fight back. She nodded. "He forgot who you are." We stayed and finished the evening with the people who mattered. No more secrets. No more lies. Just truth, and the start of something better. Photos were planned right after the ceremony. Family, friends, everyone was excited to capture the moment. I had already arranged for a few people to come as guests through mutual friends. One of them was the woman he'd been seeing behind my back. She didn't know I knew. She didn't even know who I was. I made sure she would be there. When we walked out to the photo area, I saw her standing near the group, talking to someone. She looked comfortable, unaware. Then he saw her. His face lost all color. He stopped walking. I stepped ahead, waved her over with a friendly smile, and said, "Come, let's take a group photo." She came closer, still smiling. I turned to him. "Honey, you didn't tell me you knew her," he stammered. She's just someone I met through work." I looked at her. "He told you he was single, didn't he?" Her smile faded fast. "Yes, he said he was divorced." I nodded. "Well, he isn't." The color drained from her face too. She turned to him. "You lied to me?" He tried to explain, reaching for both of us. "Please, I didn't mean." But she stepped back. "I believed every word you said. You even told me you had no contact with your ex." I raised an eyebrow. "Ex? That's news to me." The group around us went silent. Phones were down. People were staring. He tried to speak again, but the words got stuck. Then she looked at me. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." I nodded. "I know you didn't." He started yelling, desperate to stop what was happening. "Don't do this here. This isn't the time." But it was already done. I looked at her. "Would you like to walk with me?" She nodded without a word. We turned and walked away, leaving him in the middle of the crowd, shouting things no one cared to hear. Cameras clicked. The background wasn't just balloons and flowers anymore. The moment was captured forever. Not just a photo of a proud family, but the moment truth stepped into the light. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need a speech. Just a simple walk with the woman who thought she was alone in the lie. But now she wasn't. Our daughter asked me to give a small speech at the reception after the ceremony. I could see the surprise in his eyes. He thought I wouldn't speak. He thought I'd stay quiet like always. I stood up and took the microphone. The room fell silent. Everyone waited, expecting kind words and sweet memories. I started slowly. "Today is not just about a diploma," I said. "It's about growth, about lessons that took years to learn, not just in school, but in life." I glanced around the room. Some lessons are hard. Some are quiet, like learning that people are not always who they say they are. A few people shifted in their seats. "Sometimes," I continued, "you give your heart to someone who wears a mask. You believe their promises, their stories, until the truth whispers louder than the lies." I didn't mention names. I didn't have to. "They teach you that love means staying," I said, "but real love sometimes means leaving." More heads turned. Eyes were watching him now. "You learn that respect is not given to those who demand it, but to those who earn it. And that silence isn't weakness. It's a pause before strength speaks." He stood up suddenly. "This isn't about me," he shouted. The room froze. No one else said a word. But the way they looked at him said everything. He had just confirmed what no one was sure of. Now they were. I kept the microphone steady. "If someone thinks this story is theirs," I said calmly, "maybe they should ask themselves why." He stood there for a second longer, then slowly sat down, eyes down, hands shaking. I looked at our daughter, who was standing in the front. She didn't look confused. She looked proud. "Today, I speak not just as a mother," I finished, "but as a woman who finally found her voice. And I hope one day you'll use yours too, when it matters most." The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then came the applause. Not loud, but steady. Real. He didn't look up again, and I didn't need to say another word. He waited until the end of the reception. Everyone was still sitting, finishing dessert, smiling, enjoying the moment. Then he stood up and cleared his throat, tapping a glass with his spoon like he had something important to say. "I just want to make an announcement," he said loudly. "After today, I'll be moving on. This marriage is over. I'm starting a new chapter." Some gasped. Others looked around, unsure if he was serious. I lowered my head and wiped a tear from my cheek. He smirked, thinking he'd broken me. He always wanted to be the one in control, the one who delivered the final blow. I stood up slowly and held the tissue to my face, sniffling softly. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice low and shaking. He smiled wider. "There's no need to be upset. It's better for both of us." I nodded, still wiping my eyes. Then I turned to the crowd. "You're right," I said, dropping the tissue. "It is better. That's why I'd like to introduce someone special." A man stood from the back of the room. Tall, well-dressed, calm. "This is James," I said. "He's been my friend for over a year. Now he's more than that." Everyone turned. Whispers filled the air. "And unlike you," I continued, looking at my husband, "he knows everything. About the lies, the cheating, the money you stole. He helped me through all of it." James walked forward and took my hand. I smiled. My husband's face twisted. "You planned this?" "No," I said. "You did. When you thought I'd fall apart." He stepped forward, voice rising. "You think you can embarrass me?" People started backing away as he shouted louder. "You think this is funny? You think you're better than me?" Security moved in when he grabbed a chair and slammed it to the floor. "Sir, step back," one of them warned. He kept yelling, cursing, pointing at James, at me. Then they grabbed him, pulled him away, and cuffed him right there. He screamed all the way to the door. The room slowly calmed down. People turned back to their seats, unsure what to say. I looked at James. He gave me a soft smile. "I told you," he said quietly, "he'd lose it. And I told you, I said. I was done letting him win. That night didn't end the way he planned, but it ended exactly how I needed.